Today you're going to learn how to create this unique looking effect that tells a story within 4 images. So we'll first start with this image in the background of a building, then an image of a door with this first circle, and then an image of an interior like a hallway, and then a subject in the middle of a woman just having a coffee. So it's kind of telling a story of what this image is, all within 4 images. So if you like these types of videos, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps out this channel. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do, because I come out with videos like this daily. And if you have any questions about any of the steps that we're about to take, you can comment down below and I'll answer you as soon as I can. So let's get started. So if you want to follow along with this tutorial, you can find the links to all of these images in the description below. So these are all copyright-free images that you can use on your projects, on your business, completely for free. So I'm just going to simply right click and copy this image, and let's go into Photoshop. So this is the project I was working on before, but we're just going to go File, New, and Photoshop should already have the width and the size of the image that you just copied, and so that should be the width. But if you don't see this, just put in 1057 by 1500 pixels and keep the resolution at 72 pixels per inch, and keep the color mode at RGB. So we're going to click on create. So here's our canvas, and I'm just going to go edit, paste. So there's our image. So I only want the bottom part of this image here. So to crop out the top, we're going to go to the left right here to the crop tool, and you get all these controls in the corners. So just go to the top of the image and just simply click and drag, and I'm just going to cut it off just at the tip of the roof there, or maybe just around here. Cool. And I'm going to hit enter, and then I'm going to go to the zoom tool, and I'm going to click on 100% right here at the top. So it just nicely zooms in for us. So next I want that circle to put where the door will be. So the next image that I'm going to use is this door image right here. So I'm going to right click and copy this image, but before we actually paste this into the canvas, I actually want to draw the circle first. So go to the left here, click and hold where the selection tool is, and click on the elliptical marquee tool. So I just call this the circular selection tool, so just click that, and as you click and drag, you're going to hold shift. So if you hold shift, you'll draw a perfect circle. If you don't hold shift, you'll just draw an oval. So let's draw a perfect circle, sorry, and we're going to place that nicely in the center. And don't worry about the size for now. We're going to edit that later on. And I'm going to go edit, paste special right here. So edit, not paste, but paste special, and then click on paste into. So the door image that we just copied before is pasted inside the circle. And you'll notice, so if you don't see this layer panel right here, go to Windows and click on layers right here. So there's 2 layers. One layer is the original image layer. And I'm just going to double click on that layer to rename it. I'm just going to name it image 1, and I'll just say image 1 building. Next, the next layer is door circle, and you'll notice on the door circle layer there's this extra box that's called the layer mask box. So if you press Alt and then click in that box, you'll see this right here. So this is the circle that we drew. So anything that's white inside this layer mask box is revealed, and anything that's black is hidden. So if I press Alt again and click on that layer mask box, it'll just take us back to the normal image. So you can see what's revealed, which is the circle, and anything outside of that circle is hidden. So if I choose the image box right here next to the layer mask box, and then choose the move tool right here, I can move the image around, and I can place it exactly where I want it to be. So I can also resize it by pressing Control T or Command T if you're on a Mac, and so you can just resize it just like this, and I can place it just exactly in the center. So I actually want the edges to be like all wood, so I actually want to move that just right to the edge like that, and also this side as well. So that looks good. And placed like the door handles just right in the center of the circle as well. Yep, so I think I like it there. So we can just hit enter there. So there's our circle with the door inside. So now let's if you try to move this, it's going to move what's in the center of the circle like that. So you don't want that anymore, because you've whoops, I just did undo. Let me just go back. So you don't want that anymore. You just want to move the entire circle. So right there where it says on the door circle layer, there's this gap in between the door circle layer mask box and the original image. If you click in the middle, there's this little clip icon there. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's this little clip icon. So if I click in the middle and I bring that clip icon back, and when I try to move it, I move the entire thing with the circle and the image inside it. But if I click off that clip icon, now I just move what's inside of that circle. So it depends on what you want to edit. So if you want to move the entire image, then you clip that icon on. If you want to clip it off, if you just want to move inside the circle, just clip it off. Cool. So now I'm going to keep that clip there because I just want to move the entire thing now, and I'm just going to place it nicely. We can place all of this in the right way later on, but I just want to get all of the circles in here. So next I'm going to draw the other circle. So just like before, just click and drag, and let's place this just right in the center like that, just around there. I want it to be in the center of the actual circle that we just drew, so just somewhere around here. So it doesn't need to be too accurate because we're going to make it all accurate later on. So just like before, let's go into pixels.com and let's copy this image. So right click, copy image, and just like before, we're going to go edit, paste special, and paste into. So there's our image. And I'm going to make sure the clip layer is turned off this time because I want to edit the image inside of this. And let's go Control T to resize this. And I want to resize this right in the middle, so it looks like a hallway. So just about there. Nope, that's a bit too high, I think. Maybe just there is good enough. And I'm going to move just right to the right a little bit, so it all kind of aligns with all of those lines going through the doors. So let's just make it all align. There we go. I think that's the right spot. Cool. So next, let's go to the other image, the fourth image, which is this woman having a coffee. So let's right click and copy this image, and let's draw the next circle in. So maybe about this size here. So I think that circle is a bit too, actually I think it's a good size. So let's just leave it at that. Let's just see what this looks like anyway. So we can resize everything later on once we actually place all the images. So let's go edit, paste special, paste, oops, let's edit, paste special, and paste into. So let's resize this, Control T or Command T if you're on a Mac. So I'm just going to resize it so we can see the woman, the model inside. There we go. So I also want to get like the desk and everything in there as well. So I want to place like the desk like in the center, but it looks like the image might be a bit too small, but that's okay. We can just kind of place it just there. Cool, I think that looks pretty good. I think we just got the subject in there. Cool, so I'm quite happy with that. So next we're going to start editing this and making it look a bit more realistic. So what do I mean by making this look more realistic? So right now it just looks like a circular cutout of an image and it's just stuck on top of this other image. So we need to add some shadows to make it look more realistic and also kind of slightly change the colors and the lighting so all of it kind of fits in. So to do that, I'm going to hide the top two layers, which is the model and the hallway. So then I'm going to kind of just copy this circular image. So I'm just going to fully make this into a circular image. So to do that, I'm going to press and hold Control, and then I'm going to click on the layer mask box of the door circle layer. So that's going to select the selection that we had before for the door circle. Then you go into Edit, click on Copy Merged. So that's Copy Merged, so it just copies everything in that circle right here. Then I'm going to simply press Control V or Command V if you're on a Mac to paste. So we have this new layer here, which is, I'm just going to name it Circle Door. Circle Door. And let's hide the layer behind it, which is the original Circle Door layer that we had. So there we go. So now let's place this nicely in the center, just there. And I'm going to add some shadows around it. So we're going to add some inner shadow and an outer shadow. So what do I mean by an inner shadow? Just go to a layer. So make sure you have the circle door layer selected, and then go to layer at the top, and then go to layer style, and then click on inner shadow. So what that will do is it's going to add like a slight inner shadow there. So I'm not sure if you can see it there. So you can edit it right here. So if I increase the distance, you can see the shadow coming out. So that increases the distance of the shadow. You can also increase the choke of the shadow. So you can make it kind of smaller. So it kind of rounds it out a little bit. Or you can decrease that just there. Or you can increase the size of the shadow as well. There you go. And you can also increase the opacity of the shadow so you can see it more clearly there. So I might increase that to just about 60%. So that looks good. And you can also play around with the lighting. So right here you can see where the light hits from. So right now it's coming from the bottom right hand corner. So you can decrease that or change the angle of that by just playing around with this little circle right here. So I'm going to leave it just around here. So that looks good. And you can also add a second shadow if you wanted to. So right now I want to kind of sharpen those edges a little bit more and make it a little bit more darker. So I can add a second shadow by just pressing this little plus icon right here. So that's going to add a second shadow, but this shadow is going to be a little bit smaller. So I can just decrease the size, and I can also decrease the distance. So now that kind of adds like a sharp edge. So before it kind of looked like this. Now it looks like this. So now we have this really nice looking sharp edge there. So you can keep editing this as many times as you want. And let's keep going here. There we go. I think that looks much better. So it really depends on what kind of shadow you're looking for, what kind of realistic image that you're looking for. So next, let's add a drop shadow. So if you scroll down, there's these options here called drop shadows. So you can just click on one of these. And now you can see there's a drop shadow on the other side now. So the light comes from here and it adds a shadow here, and it also adds a shadow there. So it's a really nice looking effect and really makes your image look more realistic. So let's play around with this. I think I'll actually like that shadow there. So we can just add another plus on it, and let's also add a smaller shadow inside it so we can get those nice edges. So let's lower the opacity on this one and decrease the distance on it. Let's decrease the size of that shadow, and let's also decrease the spread just slightly. And yeah, I think that looks good there. So before it looked like this, now we add that kind of a nice looking edge just around it. So I might just lower the opacity just slightly a bit more. That looks good. So I'm going to do the same things now to all the other circular layers as well. So I'm going to turn on this hallway layer right here. And I'm actually going to rename this layer to hallway. And I'm going to make sure the clip is on so we can move the entire image. So just like before, I'm going to press Control and click on the layer mask box right here. And I'm going to copy this image. So this circular image. So go edit and go click on copy merged. So the reason I'm clicking on copy merged instead of copy, it just copies everything together. If you just click on copy, it's just only going to copy what's within that layer. So that would also work, but usually it's good practice to just click on copy merged on Photoshop. So just like before, click on edit and paste. So now we just have this layer right here. So I actually shouldn't have named that previous layer hallway. I should have named this one hallway. There we go. And I'm going to go place this in the middle, and get that nice effect. And I might actually make this a bit smaller so we can actually see more of the wood there. Yep, so I think that looks good there. So now you can actually apply the same exact shadows that you applied to the door to this one now. And you can just slightly edit that. So just like before, just go into layer and go to layer style and then click on inner shadow. So you can see all of these other inner shadows here. So you can just click this one off and just turn these ones on instead. And maybe this one, which is the harder edge one, and you need to slightly edit these ones. So yep, so that already looks pretty good. So just these two shadows alone, but you can slightly edit them, but I think I'm gonna leave it at that. Let's just see what it looks like with the image of the subject in the middle as well. So let's click on OK, and now let's go into the next image, and I'm going to create an extra, I'm going to press and hold Control, click on the layer mask box right here, and then click on Edit, Copy Merged, and then go Edit, Paste. So let's hide this layer, and I'm just going to name this layer Subject, and I'm going to place this image right in the center again, and let's also make this smaller. So I think that looks good, just there. And now let's put in some inner shadow. So let's go into Layer, Layer Style, and then click on Inner Shadow. There we go. So I think that looks good, just the same shadows as before. I think these ones. So I think these bigger shadows are a bit too strong for the one in the middle. So I might just add one small shadow there. So I think that just that alone is enough. And you can also add some outer shadows. So like this one here, or maybe this one. So that actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to keep that one there. And let's click on OK. So I might also add some outer shadows on this one too. So let's double click on this, scroll all the way down to drop shadow, and let's add some of those outer shadows. So let's lower the opacity of this outer shadow a little bit. It's a bit too much, I think. And there we go. So that looks good. So now you can see all of these shadows kind of going around, and if the shadows are a bit too much, you can actually turn off some of these shadows and just keep some of those shadows in there. So I think I might actually get rid of the drop shadow on this second hallway layer, because I think that just that alone looks pretty good. And let's not add a shadow to this one either. I think this drop shadow, I don't think it really needs, the inner circles really need a drop shadow. So you need to kind of play around with these different images, see which ones actually look good and all that. So now it looks good. And one more thing you can actually do, so you can just click on inner shadow, and you can actually play around with the angle of the light. And it changes the angle on everything. So you can edit this to customize this to any way that you want. So it gives it a really nice, cool effect. So let's click on OK. Next, what we're going to do is start playing around with the lighting and the color, so all of the image kind of match. So before we actually start changing the colors, I actually want to resize some of these circles here. So first, the one right in the middle, I want to make it a little bit smaller. So I think that looks good there. Then next, the hallway, I'm going to make that a little bit smaller as well. And just place it nicely on the center there. Cool. So I think that looks good there. So now let's start changing the colors. So there's so many different options to change colors and to make them all kind of match and make all the lightings match as well. So usually I just start with brightness and contrast. So right here, there's this little icon, it's a little circle icon on the bottom right hand corner, just under the layer panel. So if you click on that, there's all of these options right here. And there's brightness and contrast. So let's play around with that. So this graph will come up. So if you push this further to the right, it becomes more bright. If you push it further to the left, it becomes darker. So you need to play around with exactly what the right amount of brightness is. Next, you can play around with the contrast. So do you want an increase in contrast? So you can see it getting really dark now. Like all the black colors become even more dark, or you can have less contrast. So I want it just right there nicely in the center. So it just kind of balances out all of the brightness and contrast. So before it looked like this, and now there's like a slight change. So you can see the wood is a bit more brighter now. So next, let's go into selective color. So it depends on what you want. So sometimes I use selective color, sometimes I use hue and saturation. If you want to learn more about all of these effects right here, I'll leave a link to another video in the description below. So let's just test out what selective color is like. So what this basically does is you can choose a certain color from this image, like a red color. You can choose all the yellows from this color. So let's say I pick the yellows. So there's some yellows around this door here. And you can change that to like any color you want. So you can make it slightly more green. So the green kind of matches the green roof. So that actually looks pretty good. Next, you can make it even more red if you wanted to, but that's not good because there's no other reds around. And you can kind of make it a bit more brighter. So now it's starting to look a bit more kind of blended into the background of the image of the color of these background images. So that looks pretty good. So I think I want to leave that at that. Next, there's some reds around here. So the red just looks a bit too bright. So what you can do is choose the reds, and now you can start playing around with the reds now. So you can make it slightly more darker, so it matches the colors now. And it becomes a bit more green, and you can see the reds actually even changing around the wood as well, because there's some reds in the wood. and you can see the reds in the wood and the carpets are actually starting to match. So that looks good. And now you can change the whites, so you can maybe match the hallway and the white colors on the buildings together. So you can just choose whites, and you can make the whites a bit more blue if you wanted to, add a bit more green in there, and we'll add a bit more pink. So I think that looks pretty good too. Now next one is neutral. So this one's a bit more extreme. It just changes everything in the image. So you have to be a bit careful with this one because you don't want it to change too much. Like if you don't want to get this red, right? So you want it to just slightly change it, but it may also kind of helps blend in all the images together, like so. So it's got kind of like a purple overlay on top of it now. And maybe you can push this further to the right. So you can increase the contrast like this too by increasing the blacks. So before it looked like this, now you kind of matched all the colors together. So now you can keep playing around with more of these effects. So you can also play around with the curves as well. This is kind of like brightness and contrast too. So this little graph comes up. So you can point to any part of this graph. So make sure you have this selected right here. Then you can point to this part of the graph and increase the brightness, or you can kind of decrease the brightness just slightly. Then you can also put in another point here, and then you can push this up to increase the brightness and push the brightness down just slightly. Just there. So let's say you don't like any of this effect that just came up. So what you can do is you can just hide this. You can just hide that there, and or you can even just lower the opacity of it just slightly. So I might just lower the opacity of the selective color just a little bit there, so that looks good. And so this is what you have to do. You just need to kind of play around with the different effects and see which ones look good and which ones don't look good. You can also play with levels here. So you can move this to increase the move the one on the left to increase the contrast, or you can move the one in the middle to also kind of increase the contrast and decrease the contrast. So I'm going to make it slightly bit more brighter because I think it's a bit too dark now. There we go. So you need to find just the right amount of whites and the right amount of black. So this is another thing you could also do. So you can click right here, and there's another option called solid color, which just applies a random solid color over the image. So let's say you want like a certain color over this image, like a really light yellow. Let's click on OK. And then you can kind of play around with like multiply. You can play around with color burn, linear, or even just color, just like a bright yellow color. So let's try maybe something like this, darken. So it's got like a yellow tint to it. But let's say you want actually a red tint. Now you can just go in here and you can turn it into like a red, really light red tint. Or that actually doesn't look good. So let's try another tint. There we go. Maybe like a blue tint. So that's just another option. And if that doesn't work, just click hide. Or you can just lower the opacity on this. So that looks nice. So it's a nice yellowish kind of look there. So one more thing, maybe just increase the whites just slightly. And you can do that by clicking on another selective color. So you can add multiple selective colors, and you can choose the yellows now. And you can just decrease the yellows a little bit now. And just increase the whites just a little bit more. And what I might actually do here as well, actually hide this as well, because I think we kind of lost the color of the wood as well. So I might just hide the yellow wood right here. And now you can also play around with the brightness and contrast a little bit more. So there we go. Cool. So I'm just playing around with what works for me. So I usually spend a bit more time to get these colors right and to get all the layouts of the circles right. And I sometimes even add some text around these circles to just make it look a bit better. But that's how you create this effect with Photoshop. If you have any questions, you can comment down below. Make sure you guys subscribe and like this video. It really helps out this channel. But I'll see you in the next video.